Terrifying tales of haunted internet stalkers, 10 sinister stories exposed and revealed. Rachel's heart raced as she sat in the dim glow of her laptop screen, the words echoing in her mind. Haunted. Internet. Stalker. She was just a small-town waitress in Pennsylvania trying to keep her family's head above water after her husband's sudden death. But as night fell and the silence of the suburban streets began to press in around her, dread slipped under her skin like ice. What if those tales weren't just stories? What if they were real? The tension grew that night, twisting through her like a vicious vine. She jumped at every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside, as memories of her late husband flickered like shadows in the corners of her mind. Just the day before, she had received a chilling message from Neighborhood Watcher 88, who had somehow known her daily routine, what time she left for work, the park where Jake rode his bike. Was it a sick joke? Rationality twisted inside her, and before she could catch herself, panic bloomed. She could hear the faint whispers of her children sleeping peacefully upstairs. The stillness was stifling, and she cursed it. Each second stretched like an eternity, as paranoia clawed at her resolve. The sun had set, but something darker was creeping in, something that made every shadow loom ominously larger. The flicker outside her window was there again, casting a sinister outline against the curtains, taunting her. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, chimes echoing through the oppressive quiet, creating a rhythm of impending doom. She peered through the peephole, and the porch was empty. Nothing. The cold sweat trickled down her spine as the whispers of her thoughts drowned out reason. Why had it come? What did it want? Days passed with mounting dread, each one bringing new nightmares. Packages appeared at her doorstep, unmarked, a riddle wrapped in brown paper. She reported her fears to the local police, but they chuckled lightly, dismissing her worries as simple paranoia from grief. The ache of isolation settled deeper, binding her wrists in a tight grip. Then she stumbled upon the truth that would peel away the last thread of sanctuary she clung to. Neighborhood Watcher 88 was a volunteer coach in the community, his radiant smile disarming. The burning fury of betrayal mixed with paralyzing fear. In that meticulously manicured neighborhood, the horror that lurked within was not a monster, but a trusted neighbor cloaked in kindness. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The fear crescendoed that night when another message pinged on her phone. I see you. Her blood turned to ice. The weight of her ever-present vigilance now felt like a noose tightening. What were the facades hiding under the calm surface of her suburban life? She barely heard the soft knock at the back door, adrenaline flooding her system. Should she run? Hide? Or open it and confront whatever nightmare was waiting on the other side? The silence around her screamed louder than ever, and the gnawing thought settled thick in her gut. What if the serene facade of her community had always been hiding a monster? Rachel's breath caught in her throat as she stared at her phone, the dim screen illuminating the word that made her insides twist with terror. I see you. Panic coursed through her veins like ice water. She hesitated, her heart pounding in time with the relentless ticking of the clock on the wall. Was it possible that Neighborhood Watcher 88 was actually here, lurking outside her home, watching her every move? A heartbeat later, another soft knock echoed faintly. It was close, too close. The soft thud reverberated through the stillness, sending shivers crawling across her skin. Get it together. This is just a joke, she thought, trying to ground herself. But the rational part of her mind clashed violently with the part that screamed for her to run. She crept to the kitchen, her footsteps silent on the hardwood floor. It felt as if the very walls were watching her, pressing in, making the air thick and suffocating. She steeled herself against the creeping dread wrapping around her throat like a noose. Peering through the back window, she scanned the darkness outside, searching the shadows that danced languidly beneath the dim porch light. There was nothing, no figure waiting there. The yard was empty, but something felt wrong. It was too quiet. No crickets chirping, no rustling leaves, just that unsettling stillness that settled heavily in her gut. The knock came again, more insistent. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the door handle. Should she call for help? The police had dismissed her before. They'd think she was overreacting again. Rachel's heart raced as she slowly twisted the knob. The door creaked open, revealing only the porch steps and the deep darkness beyond. She strained to listen, her mind racing with the possibilities of who could be there. And then she noticed that a small envelope lay on the ground just outside the door, its edges fluttering in the night breeze. Her gut twisted again. Crouching down, she reached for it, her fingers brushing against the paper, cold and brittle. It felt ominous in her hand, heavy with something unspeakable. What fresh horror was this? Hypnotized, she tore it open, her heart thumping loudly in her chest. The handwriting was unnaturally neat, each letter precise. "Welcome home, Rachel. You must be lonely without him." The words pulled her back, memories flooding her with that giant void Jake had left behind. She felt nauseous. Who would do this? Why? Suddenly, she heard a low rustling sound coming from the corner of the yard, snapping her head towards the source. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she squinted into the darkness. There, in the moonlight, a figure shifted, and Rachel's breath hitched. It was the neighbor, the friendly coach, smiling as if nothing was wrong at all. "Hey, Rachel. Just checking in? I brought you something." His voice seemed casual, but there was an edge to it, a layer of menace lying beneath the surface. Before she could respond, the door slammed shut, the darkness swallowing her whole. The last remnants of courage dissolved into sheer panic. He was too close, too familiar, and far too unpredictable. What had once felt like a safe neighborhood was now a suffocating trap. As she pressed her back against the cool wood of the door, dread wrapped around her heart tighter than ever. Rachel knew one thing for certain. Her ordinary life had twisted into a nightmarish game of cat and mouse, and she was the prey. What would happen next? As she backed away slowly, shaking hands reaching for her phone, the screen lit up again. Another message buzzed through, lighting up the dark room. "Don't run. I can see you." Now she had to decide, could she stay and face him? Or was it time to finally escape the house that had become her prison? Rachel's heart hammered against her ribcage, each beat a desperate plea for clarity amidst the swirling chaos. She stared at her phone, the blue light of the screen mocking her with its stark brightness. "Don't run, I can see you." The words rang in her head, echoing like a death knell. Her mind raced. She couldn't stay here, not if he could see her. But how could she escape a stalker lurking in the shadows? The closed door felt like a flimsy barrier against the horrors outside. Panic surged, mingling with disbelief. She needed a plan, something solid to grasp. Glancing around her living room, her eyes settled on the back door, the one leading to the alley. If she could sneak out, maybe she could find a neighbor, someone to help her. Rachel dashed silently to the door, her palms clammy against the handle. The alley felt dangerously familiar, yet foreign in this moment of dread. Just as she was about to twist the knob, another message popped up on her phone, vibrating violently in her hand. "You shouldn't have closed the door." The breath hitched in her throat. He was right there. The walls pressed in, her breath quickened. Screams erupted in her mind. What was happening? She forced herself to keep calm. She couldn't let fear take over. Rachel weighed her options: stay, or risk stepping into the unknown. That threshold of the back door felt like an abyss. Gathering all her courage, she flung open the door and stepped outside. Cold air bit into her skin, a stark contrast to the sweat clinging to her body. She felt exposed, vulnerable. The alley was empty, just a stretch of brick and shadows, but danger cloaked it. Did he follow? Was he watching? Each step felt like a gamble. She pressed forward, glancing back at her house, the dark windows now like searching eyes, waiting. She picked up her pace, the whisper of her feet against the ground muffled by the overwhelming silence. As she rounded the corner, her phone buzzed again. She froze, heart threatening to leap from her chest. The message read, "Look up." Against her better judgment, Rachel tilted her head, dread flooding her veins. Above her, on the rooftop of her house, a shadow flickered. Was he up there? Her breath itched, panic spiking as she realized he could see everything from that vantage point. Then she heard a loud thud that echoed through the alley, ricocheting in her ears. The front door to her house creaked open, just a crack, and there he stood, the coach, illuminated by the pale light from the porch. His smile was gone, replaced by a demeanor so cold it made her shiver. "Rachel," he called, voice sweetened like honey, yet laden with malice. "You don't want to play this game." She turned to run, adrenaline surging as her legs propelled her forward. Each frantic breath felt heavier than the last, the alley stretching into an endless nightmare. Door after door, she pounded desperately, praying for salvation. But as her knock echoed unanswered, despair clawed at her heart. What was she going to do now? Was she truly alone? Just then, another message pinged on her phone, drawing her attention back to the small screen. "You can't hide from me, Rachel. I'm closer than you think." Her breath quickened, chest feeling tight as the shadows closed in and the horrific realization sank in. There would be no easy escape from the nightmare that had just begun. The alley grew darker, swallowing her whole as the looming figure of menace loomed behind her, a predator close on her heels. Could she evade him, or had the hunter already turned into the hunted? As fear deepened its grip, Rachel knew one truth: the game was just beginning, and the stakes could not be higher. Rachel sprinted down the alley, each step echoing the rhythm of her heartbeat, erratic, wild. The cool night air felt alive with her fear, wrapping around her like a suffocating fog. She didn't dare look back, convinced that even the slightest glance would ring the dinner bell for whatever monster had crossed the threshold from the shadows into her reality. The darkness thickened around her, making the world feel small. Posture high, walls tight, sounds collided and merged into a distant cacophony. Her mind screamed for focus as she continued forward, darting towards a flickering streetlight, its glow a feeble shield against the enveloping black. The light flickered in and out, teasing her with moments of false security. "Get to the street," she whispered to herself, pressing through the alley. But the street felt like a fantasy now. Somewhere between here and there, the reality of the predator grew more palpable. The thought of being seen, being caught, crushed her resolve a little more with every echoing footfall. Then her phone buzzed again, sending fresh jolts through her already frayed nerves. "I can almost see your shadow." What did he want? Did he want a game? A chase? Well, he had one now. She didn't need to be a pawn. She picked up speed, desperation kicked in. Rachel could already feel the cold sweat pooling at her temples, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts that felt like the rhythm of her own impending doom. As she reached the mouth of the alley, she risked a glance over her shoulder, barely catching a silhouette move back into the shadows, both comforting and terrifying. He was still there. "Stay calm, just keep moving," she muttered. But as she darted into the lights of the street, dread pulsed through her veins. No one was around. The street felt a bit too empty. A flicker of hope crashed head-on with reality, colliding into anxiety. She needed to find someone, anyone. Her phone vibrated again, jolting her focus back to the screen. "The game only gets more exciting from here." "Your heart is racing, isn't it?" Rachel bit back a scream. How could he know that? A hard thud from somewhere in the alley pulled her attention, heart hammering as she switched her gaze. She could barely chest down the erratic thumping echoing in her ears. Whatever it was nearby. Her instincts reacted, and she took off, running as if the ground itself could pull her back. She rounded a corner, lunging away from the pulse of the alley, but her body hurt. Breathless, she stumbled into a small park, desperation cutting deeper. Could she hide? The branches of a solitary tree trembled, leaves whispering secrets that she wouldn't linger to hear. As she ducked behind the tree, she froze, catching her breath in desperate gasps. She peered around the trunk, eyes darting to every flicker in the darkness. Panic clawed at her throat. Where was he? Then, the phone vibrated again, an incessant reminder of his presence. "Oh, Rachel, you're so close." Closer than ever. Tremors coursed through her, she could feel sick dread roll in her stomach. That smile, that taunting voice, it felt as if he were right beside her. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes nearby made her shoot upright. Rachel's eyes widened in terror. Her phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering to the ground. It felt like time suspended, a pause before inevitable calamity. And then she heard its footsteps closing in. Rachel, the whisper slithered through the air, curling around her like the sharp blade of a knife. She couldn't stay here. Not now. But as she took off running into the night, she felt an uncanny chill settle in the air. What if he was everywhere she turned? The pulse of his pursuit quickened, tension thickening as the shadows danced. Keep running, she told herself, but the truth loomed larger. She was trapped in a web of fear woven tight around her. What if the game had only just begun, and she was already losing? Her lungs burned as she tore through the park, each stride fueled by panic. Branches clawed at her skin, the cold night air cut deep like knives. She darted to the edge, glancing back. The shadows clung to the trees, mocking her with their stillness. Nothing. No one. But in the silence, dread echoed louder than any footfall. The street stretched ahead, desolate and ghostly. She hesitated, caught between the urge to keep running and the desperate need to find shelter. A flickering neon sign drew her attention, promising refuge, a diner, dimly lit but open. It felt like an oasis in a desert of dark. Just a quick breath, she muttered, urging her legs toward the sodium glow. As she burst through the door, the faint jingle of the bells seemed like a death knell. The diner was empty save for a bored waitress flipping through a magazine at the counter. Rachel's heart sank. She could have screamed for help, but something held her throat tight. She chose a booth at the back, pressing against the cool vinyl as if it could shield her from the nightmare outside. She pulled her phone from the floor, checking for signs of life. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the screen. No new messages. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The waitress looked up, raising an eyebrow. "You okay, honey?" The question hung heavy, a fragile lifeline. But Rachel shook her head. "I just need to wait for someone." The waitress smirked, returning to her magazine. Outside, the streetlight flickered intermittently, weaving shadows across the windows like the fingers of an unseen menace. Rachel tried to blend into the plastic booth, but every heartbeat felt like a siren. A faint scratch of metal against glass snapped her attention. She rose, glancing outside. The outline of a figure lingered by the street lamp, his face hidden beneath a dark hood. She squinted. Could it be? Was it him? Rachel, the voice floated through the glass, taunting and casual, as if they were old friends. The pitch hit a pitch that sent chills rippling down her spine. "Get away from me!" she yelled, shaking with dread. "Make this easier, Rachel." He paused, letting the last word drip like poison. "You can't run forever," the waitress huffed, growing visibly annoyed. "You need to leave that guy alone. He has been here before, disturbing people." Her tone suggested she was tired of the game, indifferent to the drama unfolding right in front of her. Before Rachel could respond, her phone vibrated once more. The screen glowed ominously, displaying a single message: "Behind you." Heart pounding, she whipped back around. The diner's empty tables lined up like spectators to her horror. The waitress had vanished, leaving only the ringing silence behind. Rachel felt the world slip into a low hum, nerves buzzing, threatening to snap. "That's it, Rachel." The voice seemed to envelop her with a sinister glee. "You're already in my game." Panic surged, tearing through her veins. She had to leave now. She scrambled out of the booth, racing for the door. The bell jingled again, but as she flew outside, her breath caught. The street was deserted. Where had he gone? Something glimmered in the shadows, a flash of steel. For a moment, she caught a glimpse of his eyes, reflecting the streetlight like a predator. And then he was gone again, leaving only an ominous whisper: "You can't hide from me." Rachel spun around, the world closing in, every creak and whisper amplifying her terror. The game was getting darker. She raced up the street, feet pounding against the pavement, pulse racing. Where was she going? What was the plan now? But the looming dread scattered her thoughts. It chased her as it swirled around, fogging her mind. As she turned the corner, she thought she heard laughter, cruel, mocking laughter. What had she done to deserve this? And in that moment, the question slithered into her mind: what if he really had turned every corner before her? What if she was never meant to escape? With every heartbeat, the game escalated. What came next would decide it all. Rachel's feet moved instinctively, propelling her deeper into the heart of the city. The buildings loomed like watchful giants, their windows dark and uninviting. She could feel his presence always just out of sight, like a shadow splintered in fragments of light. Every breath felt like a prayer, each hurried step echoed her desperation. She rounded another corner and spotted a flickering light spilling from a nearby alley. Her heart raced, a desperate flicker of hope igniting within her. Maybe there was someone there, a chance to find help, to escape this madness. As she dashed toward it, the alley became a throbbing chasm filled with tangled shadows. Graffiti smeared the walls, angry colors twisting under the dim glow. The light source flickered out completely, plunging the space into darkness. "Hello?" she called, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with fear. Silence enveloped her, heavy and suffocating. She took a hesitant step deeper, teeth clenching as the smell of damp concrete filled her nostrils. Something skittered in the dark. Rats? Or perhaps it was him, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. As she strained her eyes to see, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the fragmented light of a neglected street lamp. It wasn't he, the man from outside the diner, thank God. But it wasn't he, a friendly face either, a worn and faded expression marred by distrust. "You shouldn't be here," the figure growled, eyes darting nervously around as if expecting an attack. "This place isn't safe." "I don't care about safety," Rachel snapped. "Someone is following me." The stranger's eyes widened, flickering to the entrance of the alley. "You need to go. Now." Before she could reply, he lunged forward and yanked her arm, dragging her deeper into the alley. Panic surged again as she fought against his grip. "Stop!" she screamed, pulling free and glancing back toward the mouth of the alley. Was he there? Was he coming for her? "Shut up!" the man hissed, his voice low but urgent. "If he's out there, and he hears you, we both die." Rachel's heart raced. Her instincts screamed to run, but she hesitated. A part of her knew she needed help, but the stranger felt like another potential threat. Still, he seemed desperate, scared even, which meant the urgency of the situation was real. "Who?" she demanded, breathless and frantic. "Who's coming?" "Someone who likes to play games," he said, his voice trembling. "One wrong move and it's over." Rachel felt cold sweats mingle with adrenaline. Every detail of her surroundings blurred into a haze. "What do you mean?" "I can't. I need to get away from here." "Listen," he said, glancing past her with wild eyes. "Keeping quiet is the only chance we have. You need to do exactly what I say. When he comes, don't look. Don't make a sound." Panic threatened to explode within her, but she nodded, feeling trapped. The stranger began to slink further into the shadows, gesturing for her to follow. The darkness pressed against her, thick and suffocating. She hesitated, fear transforming into instinct. She didn't want to go deeper into the city's underbelly, but she had no choice. As they crept away, the oppressive silence returned, wrapping around them like a noose. Rachel could feel the walls closing in, a pressure building like a storm. What was lurking in that darkness? What kind of game was being played tonight? Suddenly, a low sound echoed nearby, the unmistakable scrape of a boot against the pavement. The game was far from over. With a lump in her throat, Rachel felt the weight of dread settle in her gut. It was only a matter of time before the hunter became the hunted, and the question screamed in her mind: would they survive the night? Who would make the last move in this deadly contest? Rachel's heartbeat pulsed in her ears, a relentless reminder of her vulnerability. The heavy footsteps echoed close now, rhythmically measured, deliberate. She wanted to scream, to bolt, but the stranger's grip was like iron. He pulled her back into the shadows, a protective yet unsettling presence. "Stay close," he murmured, his breath hot against her ear. "He is near." She glanced up at him, but his eyes were fixed on an unseen point outside their refuge, a chilling combination of fear and determination. Was this man truly on her side? With the looming threat drawing nearer, doubt twisted in her gut like a knife. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped. A silhouette appeared at the alley's mouth, tall and imposing beneath the flickering streetlight. He stood still, scanning the darkness, seeming to sense their presence. Rachel's breath hitched, every second stretching into eternity. "Please don't look," the stranger whispered, his voice trembling slightly. It felt like a dare, a game of Russian roulette. The thought of disobeying made Rachel's skin crawl. Was this figure really a predator, as the stranger said, or just a misguided soul like herself? Time slipped through her fingers like sand. She focused on the stranger, watching his face for any hint of hope. Instead, he seemed frozen. His lips mouthed something, a warning? A plea? Rachel could barely discern the tension radiating from him. The silhouette shifted, stepping farther into the mouth of the alley, revealing a ghastly mask, a twisted, mocking grin plastered across a pale face. The terror lurking just beyond their shadows became alarmingly tangible. "Run," her mind screamed, but her body wouldn't obey. She was trapped in a cocoon of fear, a spectator in her own nightmare. The figure stepped closer, until details sharp and tattered clothing hung from its frame, and its eyes sparked with something sinister. Rage? Amusement? Perhaps it thrived off the terror it instigated. Suddenly it stopped, tilting its head as if testing the air. A low laugh rose from its throat, deep and guttural. It leaned forward, lips curling, revealing sickly teeth that gleamed in the dim light. "You shouldn't be playing hide and seek in my territory," it taunted, voice dripping with malice. "Especially with me on the hunt." Rachel's insides churned. Captivated by primal fear, she felt her fingers twitch, ready to bolt at any moment. How had this become her reality, caught in a sick game between hunter and prey? "Don't move," the stranger hissed, his grip tightening on her arm. Rachel obeyed, but her heart raced against his unyielding restraint. What did he see that she couldn't see? What was counting down? Then, an adrenaline surge ignited within her, a willed defiance rising against the paralysis. "What do you want?" she whispered, voice quaking, the question tasting like broken glass on her tongue. The figure grinned wider, its gaze locking onto Rachel, a dark flame of delight flickering in its eyes. "I want what makes you squirm, what makes the darkness real." A chill swept through her, freezing Rachel's blood. She could see now, each mocking feature amplified by the rot of its malevolence. This was no ordinary stalker. This was a nightmare made flesh. Before she could process another thought, the stranger yanked her deeper into the recesses of the alley, the breath stolen from her lungs. They stumbled backward, tripping over debris, desperate not to attract the monster's attention. "We need to move. Fast," he panted, urging her onward. The unsettling laughter echoed behind them, a siren song drawing closer. As they turned another corner, dread gripped Rachel again, twisting her stomach. What had this place become? Why hadn't they run the moment they sensed danger? The echoing laughter followed them, reverberating through the crumbling walls. An ominous realization dawned: they were caught in a twisted maze, one with no clear exit. "Just keep going," the stranger shouted, urgency threading his voice as he glanced over his shoulder. But in the depth of Rachel's heart, an icy question lingered: was this nightmare merely beginning, or had they unknowingly crossed the threshold into something far worse? The game was still afoot. They stumbled into an opening, a narrow passageway that opened up into a courtyard. The murky ground was slick underfoot, shadows lurking like anxious specters waiting to claim their prize. Rachel felt the stranger's grip relenting slightly, but she dared not move away, not when she sensed the hunter still looming nearby. "Where are we?" she gasped, breathless, craning her neck to peer into the dark corners. The space was abandoned, piled high with debris, remnants of forgotten lives. "An old parking lot. No one comes here anymore," the stranger replied, but his voice betrayed a tremor. Behind them, a haunting laugh erupted, almost musical, shattering the suffocating silence. It echoed off the cracked walls, reverberating through Rachel's bones. She shuddered, a visceral response to the vile sound. "Keep moving," he urged, pulling her along. Each step felt like a countdown, the threat of violence lurking just behind the safety of their hurried escape. Light flickered from a broken overhead lamp, casting grotesque shadows that seemed to stretch and crawl. Rachel hated the way it twisted her perception, making her feel watched, even by the inanimate objects around them. "You okay?" she couldn't help but ask, trying to maintain some shred of normalcy as panic surged. "I'm fine," he replied, but the way his eyes darted betrayed him. "Just fine?" she pressed, her skepticism unraveling her frayed nerves. "More than you know," he muttered curtly, his intensity shifting like the air around them. The laughter ceased abruptly, replaced by an unsettling silence. It was as if the world held its breath, waiting for something dreadful to happen. Rachel's heart pounded against her ribcage, each thump a reminder of how precarious her safety really was. Suddenly the wall across from them burst open, and the figure emerged, faster than she could process. Its ghastly mask twisted grotesquely under the lamp's flickering light, a sight designed to haunt dreams. "You really think you could escape?" It sneered, its voice a serpentine whisper that slithered into her mind. "You're in my playground now." Rachel's legs felt like lead as panic clawed up her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, but her instincts warned her against both. The stranger beside her tensed, shifting, ready to defend her. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice low and fierce. The sense of protectiveness only made the situation more surreal. Could he really face that monster? With a swift motion, the figure lunged toward them, swift as a shadow, its gnarled hands reaching to grab Rachel. "No!" she screamed, pushing the stranger forward while she turned, adrenaline fueling her own attempt to escape. The world turned chaotic. She ran blindly, not knowing where she was going, just trying to put distance between herself and that nightmarish creature. The darkness closed in around her, suffocating and unforgiving. She could hear footsteps pounding behind her, but was it the stranger or the figure? Every sound combined into a cacophony of terror. Rachel turned into another alley, desperate. The scent of decay struck her, and she stumbled, nearly falling as she lost her footing amid the crumbling asphalt. "Rachel!" the stranger shouted, but his voice echoed strangely. Where was he? Fear coiled tightly around her lungs. She couldn't think straight. She needed to find him, she couldn't face that thing alone. But as she turned, confusion clawed at her mind. The shadows danced, twisting her vision. "Stay back!" a voice boomed suddenly, and Rachel's heart sank. No, was that the stranger? Was he fighting? The laughter returned, layered beneath the chaos, twisted and dark. It promised despair. She pressed forward, ignoring the protest of her limbs. "I want to leave you," she called out, fighting against the suffocating dread. "Get away! Go!" he yelled, desperation knocking against her conviction. But shadows were thick and dark, and the laughter spurred faster. Rachel's breath caught. Uncertainty wrapped around her like a shroud. If she didn't find him soon, they might both become part of this monster's nightmarish game. The maze tightened, paths narrowing, choices fading. Time slipped through her fingers once more as a frigid whisper curled around her. "You think you can save him? You're already lost." Just then, she found herself cornered in a blind alley, and dread wrapped around her spine. It was here she realized she might not just be fighting for survival, she might also have to fight for her soul. What was waiting in the pitch black beyond? The haunting question hung in the air, heavy, unyielding. Was the true horror just beginning? Rachel's heart thundered in her chest as she stood frozen, the cold air creeping under her skin. Shadows clung to the brick walls, darkly pulsating, as if alive. She pressed her back against the gritty wall, seeking some kind of safety, but the claustrophobic alley only heightened her dread. The hysteria of laughter danced closer, echoing off the deserted buildings, mocking her struggle. "Where are you?" she whispered, panic squeezing her voice. eyes frantically searching the shrouded corners for any sign of the stranger. Just moments ago, he had warned her to run, but now she was stranded without direction, caught in a labyrinth of terror. The laughter transformed into a series of terrible gasps that resonated with malice, blending into the symphony of her fears. A glint of light flickered at the far end of the alley, illuminating the outline of the figure momentarily. It felt like a lure, beckoning her closer, promising a final confrontation. And there, within the shadows, she caught a quick glimpse of the stranger, a spit of movement, but then it faded. Rage boiled in her chest. Where was he? Every instinct told her she couldn't abandon him, not now. Rachel! Over here! A fleeting sound came from a different direction. It was desperate, distorted, and yet unmistakably his voice. She darted toward the sound, each step heavier than the last. Trust was a knife's edge, her instincts battling against the looming presence behind her. If she chose wrong, would it mean the end? Suddenly, a cold, clammy hand closed around her ankle, felling her to the asphalt. The world spun as Rachel cried out, scrambling to pull herself away from the grasp, but the laughter crescendoed, a haunting symphony celebrating her fear. She regained her footing, stumbling forward, heart racing. Each step felt like a new challenge against the creeping dark, her breath coming in frantic bursts. The alley opened slightly ahead, and her resolve hardened. She would find him, or she would not leave at all. As she broke into the light, the alley spread into an expanse that felt surreal. Broken cars lay abandoned, their rusting shells reflecting the flickering overhead lights. The sound of her footsteps thudded absently against the silence, a stark reminder of her solitude. Flashes of movement caught her eye. There, beneath the dull glow of a street lamp, the stranger lunged toward her, but it was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, flinging a metal contraption that clanged against the ground, a serrated chain, glinting and dreadful. Rachel! He shouted as his arm outstretched further. The chain unraveled toward them, a grim noose forged from nightmares. She felt it brush against her ankle, and the cold made her scream as it tightened, pulling her closer to that wretched figure. In that moment, the laughter turned into a relentless chant, mocking her resistance. Together forever, the voice sang, low and deathly sweet. Rachel took a step back, adrenaline surging through her veins. She had to act, had to break free. Her gaze darted around for anything, and her eyes landed on a rusted piece of metal debris, a jagged rod. With a surge of defiance, she grasped it, raising it against the encroaching darkness. Get away from me! She screamed, channeling her deepest fear into fury. The laughter faltered as the figure hesitated, eyeing the unexpected weapon. But that moment of doubt would not last. Fate is catching up, it hissed. You want to escape from what's coming. Before Rachel could process the threat, shadows surged forward, a wall of darkness ready to engulf her. In the desperate moments following, a chilling realization struck her. What if escaping this would only lead to something worse? What if the true horror awaited just beyond her fight for freedom? Instinctively, she glanced back at the stranger. Would he still be there when the time came? The true question lingered like an infectious fear. Would they survive, or were they already trapped within a web of darkness, their souls destined to join the ghastly laughter that echoed while they struggled? The alley twisted further into the unknown, and with every breath, Rachel felt the weight of hopelessness creeping closer. What awaited them in this treacherous maze? The final confrontation simmered just beyond the corner, whispering temptingly, but was it truly the end or merely the beginning of a nightmare? Rachel took a deep breath, heart pounding, legs quaking as she steadied herself against the jagged rod. The laughter echoed in her mind, relentless and cruel, but she refused to let despair swallow her whole. I want to let you win! She shouted, voice strong against the darkness, but the challenge felt empty in the face of overwhelming dread. Without thinking, she launched herself forward, aimed straight for the dark figure lurking in the shadows. The rod struck true. The figure wheeled back with a hiss, pain etched across its grotesque face. For a moment, the laughter faltered, replaced by a moment of stunned silence. Impressive, the thing sneered, fixating on her with hungry eyes. But it won't change the outcome. Rachel's heart sank at the chilling realization. The creature was unfazed, unfurling from the shadows as if it meant to play a long game, like a spider luring in its prey. Each heartbeat pulsed in her ears, each breath became an anchor against the rising tide of fear. Suddenly she glimpsed the stranger from the corner of her eye, still engaged in a struggle with the lurking horror, darting silently between the shadows and the light. "Rachel, over here!" he called out, desperation weaving through his tone. She whipped around, taking in the surroundings. The warehouse loomed nearby, its weathered door a symbol of escape and dread. She had to move, had to act. With her borrowed courage blazing like a torch, Rachel sprinted toward the stranger, finding her footing on unpredictable terrain. Ahead of her, the figure twisted and snarled, its eyes narrowing. "Run all you want! The game isn't over until I say it is. Keep moving!" The stranger yelled again, motioning urgently. Together, they ran for the crumbling warehouse, adrenaline propelling them forward as a horrifying chill rolled in. The laughter followed like a dark cloud, pushing them faster, closer to the promise of freedom just inside the battered door. Rachel reached for the handle, trembling fingers grappling before wrenching it open with a creak that echoed like thunder in the night. Inside, the musty air clung to her skin. She felt weighty silence surround them, a stark contrast to the terror lurking outside. Once inside, Rachel cast a glance back, breath hitching as the figure paused in the doorway, a silhouette blurring the threshold of light, its malevolent presence seeping through the cracks. "You can't hide in there forever," it taunted, voice oozing with venomous delight. Panic set in anew. "What do we do?" she panted, eyes darting about for anything in escape, a weapon, hope. "Follow me." The stranger beckoned, leading her into the tangled depths of the warehouse. Metal beams loomed overhead, the architecture a puzzle wrapped in shadows. They weaved between crates and barrels that leaned like weary soldiers against the walls. "They won't stop," Rachel gasped, forcing herself to match his pace. "It's playing with us. We just have to outsmart it. There's a way out, hang on." He moved faster, directing her toward a back door barely illuminated by flickering emergency lights. "Quick!" she urged, steeling her resolve as fear slinked around her ankles, desperate to pull her back. Without warning, a loud crash reverberated behind them. The figure burst in, sprawling and relentless, as fleeting heartbeats collided into chaos. Rachel cast a desperate glance at the stranger, a silent question full of hope and dread. "Here!" he shouted, flinging open the door just as the laughter crescendoed, transforming into a bone-chilling scream that rang through the empty space. "Go!" With all her might, Rachel hurled herself through the door, adrenaline fueling her abandon. Light flooded her senses. She was emerging from the nightmare. But freedom also hung with uncertainty, the world outside still precarious. "Rachel, wait!" He pushed through just behind her, the door slamming shut with a heavy thud, sealing the darkness inside. They stumbled onto the street, breathless under the silvery glow of the streetlights. The weight lifted slightly, but Rachel's heart raced in a cruel reminder that safety was a fleeting illusion. "Where do we go?" she panted, scanning the street for anyone who might help. "Just keep running," he urged, grabbing her hand tightly, propelling them forward. As they dashed into the night, laughter erupted from the depths of the warehouse, a cruel echo chasing them down now deserted streets. With each step, Rachel clung to the fleeting hope that they could disappear into the darkness, escape the nightmare that hadn't released its grip. The passage ahead split into two directions. Without hesitation they veered left, their feet pounding against the pavement as they headed toward the brighter streets where the glow of city life thrummed in the distance. The laughter began to fade but echoed relentlessly in their minds, a reminder of the horror that could return at any moment. "What if it finds us again?" Rachel whispered, fear constricting her throat. "It won't," he said, voice firm. "Not if we stay sharp." Something shifted within her. The dread no longer felt so suffocating. Instead, it transformed into an ember of resilience, stoking the fire inside. "I can't go back. I want tea." "No, we want tea." The stranger's eyes met hers, a bond forming, a shared understanding that they were survivors, forged by the darkness of this twisted game. As they continued, they ran into a crowd now alive with laughter and chatter, a vibrant counter to the nightmare they had just escaped. The normalcy was grounding, washing over them like a bomb. But the echoes of terror still lurked around the corners of her mind. Look, let us just disappear into this throng. It'll protect us, he suggested, gesturing to the gathering people. We can figure it out together. Rachel nodded, easing into the crowd, feeling the heat of humanity restore her faith just a little bit. For now, they were safe in numbers. But she looked over her shoulder one more time, the haunting memory still spelling terror. We'll get through this, the stranger reassured her softly, squeezing her hand, a flicker of hope rekindled. But as they disappeared into the sparkling lights, a shiver ran down Rachel's spine. The game was never truly over, was it? Even now, she could feel his presence waiting in the shadows. She would never forget that night. She would never stop fighting. Because sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that blend into the light. And for Rachel, that realization meant one thing: this was just the beginning of her story, and she was ready to reclaim her life, leaving the nightmares and the darkness behind. As she stepped forward into the city, determination coursed through her veins. Every beat of her heart fueled her strength. She was not just escaping a predator, she was becoming the hero of her own story. What lay ahead would determine everything, for now, she would face life head-on, unshaken by the lurking shadows. Always ready to fight back against the night. And against whatever dared to chase her next. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let the world know you're a true fan. Flood the comments section with your reactions, theories, and your own terrifying tales. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's time to show your support, and let us keep the thrilling adventures going together.